So The Crow Salvation tells the story of a man wrongly executed for the murder of his girlfriend, so he rises from the grave to avenge their deaths. Welcome back to the Crow review series, everybody, and we are on the second first-time watch for me. If you have not followed me already, I've reviewed The Crow Original Classic, I've reviewed The Crow City of Angels, and now we are at The Crow 3, and all of these sequels are first-time watches for me. I love the original Crow, never had the heart to watch the sequels, and so I'm kind of experiencing it along with all of you guys. The Crow Salvation was a bitch to find. Let me say that first off. Shout out to Willis Greedia, my buddy CP, and his uncle for providing me with this movie. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell I was gonna do. You could not watch this thing on Amazon Prime. It wasn't on any streaming service. You couldn't get the damn Blu-ray or DVD delivered unless you bought it third party and waited for 10 months. So I don't know what the hell is going on with the distribution of this movie, but if you want to watch it, good luck. Now, this was the first Crow sequel to go direct to video. It was planned to have a theatrical release, but after the poor reception of City of Angels, they decided to skip the theatrical run aside from a short, small, sweet little run and throw it right onto direct to video. And then this franchise has been there ever since. And who knows if it'll ever come back. So The Crow Salvation is a movie that I walked into with extremely low expectations because I did not enjoy City of Angels very much. I thought it was painfully mediocre, and I thought that was the sequel that everybody said was the tolerable one of the three. When, in reality, this sequel's actually pretty good. Don't get me wrong, it's not anywhere near the quality of the first one. It's not winning any awards. It's not a bona fide classic of its time by any means. But as far as taking some new spins on the Crow storyline, I thought it was actually pretty entertaining. So, starting off with the positives of The Crow Salvation, like I just said, doing some unique things with the storyline. After having watched all 4 of these movies now, it's more or less obvious why this has not been a successful franchise and why they're having so much trouble, aside from a bit of a curse that I'll call it, trying to get a new Crow off the ground. And that's that these aren't really sequels. They're essentially remakes. It's the same storyline, it's the same basic setup, it's a revenge story of a guy being brought back to life with supernatural powers, and they have not done anything to try to differentiate their individual movies from the original Brandon Lee film, except for this one. This one does put forth some effort. Now it's not just a guy who lost somebody, it's actually a guy who was wrongfully convicted of the murder and executed by the state. And then he has to go on this mystery, and it's also the first time you get a mystery element. In every single one of these movies, you know exactly who the killers are. It's this over-the-top, ragtag group of criminals that were shown right at the beginning of the movie, and then they just go and pick them off one by one throughout the runtime. Whereas in this movie, he not only has to figure out who killed his girlfriend and set him up, but why, and also uncover the identity of one of them that has this little jagged scar that he recognized. So all throughout the movie, you'd never really know completely who the bad guys are, why they're the bad guys, and what other revelations are going to come throughout the runtime, and that made the story very engaging, much more engaging than the other 2 sequels where it's just, hey, dude's back from the dead and I go fuck people up. I also thought this movie had a pretty damn good cast. Not all the way around. There's certainly some we're going to talk about in a little bit, but as far as some of the other casts of characters that showed up in here that really surprised me, I mean, you got Kirsten Dunst. She's pretty good here. I always thought she was really good. You've got Walton Goggins in a very early role, showing his early greatness. He's awesome in this. Love seeing that guy. You've got the great Fred Ward. This guy does not necessarily show up in movies like this very often. He's much more in comedies that I have seen, but I love this guy. I love his line delivery. I love his screen presence. He's one of those unsung character actors that every single time I see him in a movie, I'm like, I fucking love that guy. You even get the dickhead from Die Hard and Ghostbusters in this. It's a pretty interesting cast, and I think all the way around, they all do pretty damn good for the movie that they're in. This movie also has a much darker, meaner tone to it that I appreciate. It's another thing that makes it stand out amongst these 4 movies. It's bloodier, it's a lot more violent, the storyline and the events going on are a lot darker, and they show a lot more. I mean, this chick that he is avenging got stabbed 53 times, and they're pretty brutal with the way that they showed this murder going on, where it was a lot of flashes and tricky editing, and in the other movies, they pretty much hold on it for a few minutes and show 4 men brutalizing a girl to where you're like, oh yeah, get them back. But even the Crow's vengeance, I mean, there's a lot more pain being endued on these guys. I mean, there's severed limbs that are found. I mean, there's people that are strung up. There's this whole side story going on as part of the mystery of who the guy with the scars are, where there's almost like this taxidermy thing going on with bodies. It's got much more of a horror element than the other movies, and I thought that that was a pretty cool new little flavor to throw in here. I also really looked at the change of the Crow makeup. Now it's not necessarily makeup, it's like facial damage. Like there's scarring to where his skin has been sliced and the rings around his eyes is almost just from being dead. It's not like somebody went and took some clown makeup and, or a Sharpie pen like in Wicked Prayer and did this Crow makeup. I don't necessarily like the way that they show how he got it, where he kind of peels his skin off and it's already there, but it was a cool, different, meaner version of the Crow makeup that hasn't really looked all that good since Brandon Lee. Now moving on to the negatives, it has to go without saying, yes, they do some new elements here, but it's essentially the same exact story over again, which is the big thing that's just the Achilles heel for this franchise that probably never should have been a franchise. And if we didn't have the tragedy with Brandon Lee, it would have been a franchise with just that character recurring and probably would have been a lot more successful. But them just constantly trying to redo this storyline about somebody who's wrong that comes back to life and tries to enact vengeance, it's pretty tired. I also thought that while definitely appreciating the mystery element to who is the scarred man and who is the head of the snake, who is the king, the whole chess piece thing that they're talking about in this movie, thought it was pretty obvious as soon as the character showed up who that was going to be, but nonetheless it was still a fun adventure to go along with. But they could have done a little bit more effort with some red herrings or making us, think that it was somebody that it wasn't. To me, it was obvious. The movie also lacks action, seriously. I mean, there's no genuine fight scenes. You could call it a shootout, but it's really just a guy standing there taking a bunch of bullets and then pulling his guns out and then taking all those people out. There's not really any excitement in this movie on the action side. They go for much more of a horror, thriller, mystery vibe, which again, I appreciate the different approach, but you still got to have some action in a Crow movie, otherwise it feels like something is missing, and they really drop the ball on any kind of excitement along with the horror and the darker elements. You need that balance. They didn't have the balance. But most of all, the thing that drags this movie down quite a bit, which actually is a big shame, is your lead actor, Eric Mabius, I believe is how you pronounce his name. I've only ever seen this guy in Resident Evil aside from this movie, and I thought he was okay in Resident Evil. Here, he's not very good. I mean, for a movie that's direct to video, to where everybody surrounding him is actually given a pretty good performance for the movie that they're in, he is the one holding it all down. For the one that all of this emotional weight is supposed to be on, and a lot of the dynamics of this movie is supposed to be hinged on his shoulders to sell you on, he doesn't do a very good job. He never really looks all that invested in what he's doing. He doesn't really look that sad or upset or angry. He's kind of emotionless throughout this movie, and I think if you would have swapped him out for somebody a little bit better, this movie actually could have been a Crow sequel that a lot of people would say is pretty damn good held up against the first one, but I think he's the main thing that makes this feel like a cheaper production. But all in all, guys, for what this is, I thought it was actually a pretty decent little straight-to-video sequel. I would actually watch this one again. I wouldn't even mind owning it. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I watched Wicked Prayer before I watched this movie, because it took me an extra day and a half to find a copy that I could actually watch, but I thought it was not too bad. It's got some elements here that certainly could be better, but for a movie that is doing the same thing over again, this one actually puts effort into trying to do some new things, and for the most part, they pull it off. So if you're a fan of the original Crow and you want to see another version of this storyline, this, so far, is the only one worth your attention. So have some lowered expectations as far as the production value and the acting quality of your lead actor, but there's actually a pretty decent little mystery to go on with the Crow's salvation. So check this thing out online, if you can find it, and stream it. So what do you guys think of the Crow's salvation? Are you a fan of this movie? Is this your favorite Crow sequel? Is this your favorite Crow movie? Or do you think this is absolute trash and you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about saying that it's got some redeeming qualities? Let me know down below, guys, and we will talk about it. Please stay tuned, because tomorrow we're going to be talking about the Crow Wicked Prayer, and then later on this week on Devil's Night, we're going to rank the Crow franchise. So please hit that subscribe button if you're a fan of this franchise, you want to check all that out. And thank you guys as always for watching, but remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.